So my name is Stacey Hughes, and I have been going to CLC for about a year and a half, and I've been following Jesus since I've been a child. The funny thing about me is that I actually hated world traveling, but that is the work of God. God always does the opposite of what you initially have or are. He always changes that and turns it and flips it upside down. I think it was like 2005. The Lord had just, it was really strange. Like he began to like stir my heart for missions, and I thought, this is really weird. I don't want to go anywhere. God opened up a way, and I went to Kenya for my very first short-term missions trip, and it completely changed my life. It changed how I hear the Lord. It changed how I seek the Lord. It changed how I interact with the Lord, and it changed my vision and purpose for my life. And so God really just gave me that as a precious jewel to hold on to, because my life didn't immediately go to missions after that. I was supposed to get a job in Chicago, and I had gotten this really great job. I got out of the ghetto and I was going to this really great job. I was super excited, and I got an email from a friend who was working in Korea, and she was like, the Lord told me and my husband, you're supposed to come here. And I was like, no. And but I said I'll pray about it anyway, and I prayed about it, and 2 weeks later I was on a plane to Korea, and that was the beginning. I remember that one time I was praying, and I was like, Lord, what have you created me to do? Like, what are you am I supposed to be a prophet because I really drive people crazy and I'm really mean? Am I supposed to have the lonely life of a prophet where everybody hates you? And I was, and it was amazing. Like I was like, just tell me, Lord, tell me what is my job in the church. And I opened up the Bible, and right there first was apostle. An apostle is somebody that plants, and that was many years ago, and that is now what God is bringing my life to do, is to go and to plant and to love on the nations. So how this missions trip came about is James went to seminary school in South Korea, and one of the people that he went to school with was Sister Deborah. And then there was a really bad typhoon that happened in the Philippines, I think around like 2011,
right by the coast. I'm on the Western Island, which
and
is
she
where the
went
majority
back
of
to the Philippines at that
live.
time, and she was working very, very hard with the government, trying to get to people, trying to get resources to people, and coordinating that effort, as well as helping with pastoring and things as well. So as I just began to pray more and more and more for her, I just felt the Lord saying, like, I'm bringing this to thought. I'm bringing this to you for a reason and a purpose. Talk to her about maybe she needs some help. See. And she just began to cry and to weep, and she was like, yes. Before we left on this missions trip, just praying it through, we had been praying, and everything was this whole trip was very unorthodox and very crazy in the planning and the implementing and the going and the choosing of the people, and everything was just not normal at all. And so it was really chaotic. As I was praying, the Lord just really spoke a word over this trip and said that it would be a trip that was filled with His grace and favor, like beyond anything that normally would happen. Name an area, and I can tell you how God miraculously gave favor and grace and provision beyond what you would normally expect. So, I in general have health issues. All of us at church have some kind of health issue or another that we don't generally talk a lot about. Almost a month or so before the trip, every single health issue that I had started flaring up. Like, it was just mad crazy. There was so much warfare going on, especially with my physical body. And not only that, not only were all the issues that I already have flaring up, but I had new issues spring up that I had never even had before. It was really crazy. And I thought, oh man, how am I going to do this? How am I going to handle this on the plane? And how are we going to be traveling with all these issues? I just don't even know, Lord, but it's too late. Walking forward in faith. Pretty much after we got on the plane, I don't remember having any health issues the rest of the entire trip. So God is just always really faithful. He's shown this to me over and over again. If you're faithful to do what He's called you to do, He will make a way for you to be able to do it. When you go to Negros Island, there's a city at the bottom of the hill, and then there's this really horrible road that you have to to go up to basically get to the church. So we took a non-off-roading vehicle up the mountain. It was Pastor Ronald's vehicle, which we were really thankful for, because otherwise we would have been going up for this hour mountain ride on a motorbike. Literally, this vehicle sounded many times like it was dying and not going to make it. I was worried plenty of times that we were going to be stuck on the side of the mountain for like the rest of the day. But every time we would just pray to the Lord, we just ask for his help, and it would just miraculously keep chugging up the mountain. We stopped in Cebu. There's this little community kind of just up on a hill. It's not in a mountain. There's a little community there. We went there to feed the kids, to give them bread, and then to also give the families they're called family packs. Charla preached for us. We did a couple songs, and that was awesome to have Charla out there doing that. It was one of the greatest blessings for me personally on this trip, was to see how God used Charla and Mike. After that, we made salvation bracelets, which were a hit. And then Deborah offered if anybody wanted to follow Jesus with their life, if they could come up. There was about 100 kids that raised their hand. They were all raising their hands, and about 10 adults. They kind of came over and joined in, and they said the prayer of salvation, that I think so important, and more important maybe even so, is that relationship. We just didn't want it to be like, hey, here's Jesus, we're done with you, So we went back toward the end of the trip and visited with all of them again and played with the kids. On this trip, Debbie had talked about doing a medical mission, and I was a little bit uncomfortable. There's kind of like a little town, if you could call it a town. It's like a strip of maybe like 4 buildings, and then kind of a public bath area right there. And that's the little town, or the little village. They do have a community center, so it's got a stage and then like a volleyball court, so kids will play basketball and things there. It was later at night, and we went down and we set up a table that had kind of medicine and oils and just bandages and all these kinds of things. And so Debbie went up and she preached, and I'm just feeling that the Holy Spirit like stirring in my heart, like there's something that I want to say. And I was like, no, and plus I'm not preaching or whatever. And she was like, Stacey, you're going to come out here and you're going to preach with me. I'm literally just sitting there, and she's like, you're going to come out and you're going to preach. And after that preaching, she invited people up, and about 60 people from the community. And this, you have to understand, this is not a big community. You're not talking about like hundreds and hundreds of people. You're talking about very, very, very few people in this area. So 60 people is quite a lot. After that, they went up to the side of the stage, and there were the Filipino pastors there. It was amazing to just watch them praying for deliverance over these people asking questions, teenagers that were sitting there asking questions, and then just having like just this open door to just know Jesus and to have their questions answered and to be ministered to in a very personal way. So then they would be ministered to by the pastors, and then they would come over and they would get their medicine, and then Charla, Mike, or I would grab one of them, and we would pray with them. And it was just a really encouraging night. I think the important thing for missionaries to know, or people that have a heart for missions or a heart to serve the Lord, is that if you meet God in your obedience, God will meet you with his power of provision. So the nice thing about the Philippines is that they do kind of have more Western infrastructure. The thing is that Pastor Ronald, like my father-in-law, is a very confident driver. However, at one point, that confidence kind of almost killed all of us in a fiery car crash. So we were driving down the road going incredibly fast, and there was a giant construction truck. We were going down, and he was going head on at a very high speed. No problem. That's common for them to do that. And then what they do is usually at the last minute they pull away, and they'll just confidently go around. The problem was that at the last minute, when he decided to pull into this lane, the dump truck decided to pass a motorist on the side, and so we were actually coming head on, and then just by little inches missed hitting this truck. I was in the middle seat in the back, and just screamed and laughed at my possible death. It kind of looked like this. So, but much longer and much louder for a much longer time, and so we all had a really good laugh about that. And that was exciting and fun, and the last time I would like to have something like that happen. But God's grace was there. We all came back alive. So.